Comrades, allow me to make some few announcements as we are trying to find our seats quietly finding your seat. Maqabane. There is an exhibition center that we must pay a visit to when you are going probably to relieve yourself, because the comrades at the exhibition center have paid a fee to have their stalls at Exhibition Hall 1. You can find paraphernalia. Trade unions of Cosatu are selling their garments there. There is also a medical team where you can test your blood pressure, your sugar levels, your VCT, so that you will remain a healthy Congress as we proceed to the 4 days that we have. Comrades, we are going to start the day, and I want to call upon the General Secretary-elect, Comrade Begin Chalinchali, to come and do a political report to the Congress. We will appreciate, comrades, that yesterday we could not finish the business of yesterday. So the next item from the yesterday's agenda is a political report. I'm going to call upon Comrade Begin to come and give us that report. No pala. I see a flag. Sakau, can I hear you? Can we try and settle down, comrades?
Thanks, President.
Of the minutes, there were unions who indicated Utama minutes about Tolanga. We hope they've been distributed to them. We'll check with them, and I think the President will find time during this morning or before lunch to finalize the minutes. The President has asked me to acknowledge Comrade Kuos Basin Holt, the President of FEDUSA, is here, but also to acknowledge Ubutu Comrade were SAFPO, Football Players Union, Seikona Endlini, SAFPO. Comrade, when we closed yesterday, we agreed on the question of the contested position. The comrades are talking. After I've delivered the short input on the report, the Deputy President will call them to report on that outstanding matters. We're running a little bit behind time, and if we're not conscious, comrade, we may experience the 11th National Congress challenges where we managed to table the political report, and when we came to the other sections of the report, we regard them as read. I want to introduce the political section of the report very briefly, comrade, on the assumptions that delegates have read the report and the union have prepared inputs to the report for the discussions. In the introduction section of the report, this is book 2. We briefly touch the history of Cosatu. We make the statement that we are coming to this Congress marking the 30 years of firm, unbroken, and uncompromising fight by this colossal federation. In 1985, we started the federation with about 500,000 members from 33 affiliates. Today, as we speak, we're almost 2 million members with 18 affiliates. This growth, comrade, should not be taken for granted. As we debate, we should not be boastful about the size. Of course, comrade, we know that size count and that numbers do not lie. But we must be mindful, comrade, that it was not just a miracle. The leaders before us worked very hard to bring the federation where it is. The record of our struggle speaks for itself. We're never neutral in the struggle. We refuse to become boots or bread and butter federation. When we're born, we're baptized by fire. As comrades, we remember that we immediately had some opposition from Inkatha. USA was launched. There was a state of emergency. In those years, there was the Cosatu house was bombed. But comrade, we responded in that period with unprecedented 1.3 million working hours lost as we were fighting for our issues. In 1985, comrades will remember in Carisfontein, Comrade Bahai made the statement and the warning to PW Border. What umnikeza nje 6 months, amabhasi lawa khona ufuna saphelile, and the new laws should be introduced on past laws. A year later, in 1986, the border government conceded to that a demand. As we are going to be discussing the report, comrade, there are a few things I think as leaders that we must bear in mind in our engagement to find one another, in our engagement, because we all believe, comrade Tuguti, we have the common goal to make, got the same strategies, but we may differ in tactics. That we are all here on behalf of the others. That we are all here leaders, and we must always acknowledge that leadership is about honor, is about privilege, and is not a right. That leaders come and go, but the organization will remain. And that we are not bigger than the organization itself. And that we must never be happy when we are divided. We must always, as the President Zuma indicated yesterday, that the unity of workers is paramount. In the report, comrade, we discuss the political turbulences, and whenever we have these issues, we're going to the report. We normally find strength, comrade, to our 2015 plan in the introduction, when we said, comrade, we have inherited the rich legacy of the democratic and militant trade unionism from our predecessors, direct from the 1973 Durban strike that led to the emergence of a democratic trade union movement. And we said, oh comrades, we owe it to these pioneers to sustain and build and strengthen Cosatu. So in the report, comrade, we raise a few issues, and I'm going to touch them very, very briefly, comrade. We reflect on the balance of forces. We said, comrade, in 2012, when we met here, there were a number of positive development. We reported about the development in the Latin America, the many left government which were elected to power. But as we know, comrade, the balances of forces are not static. There were responses from the West. As you see in the report, the use of wars, particularly by the Americans, the attack of workers in terms of their rights. So we highlighted those issues, comrade, just to reflect where things globally are. But there has been some responses, comrade, as the report indicates. The development in Cuba, the American stance in terms of Cuba, of course, the Cuban government has indicated that that is the beginning, and there are issues that are non-negotiable from the Cuban side. The development in BRICS, there's a big section in the report that talks about the development of BRICS and how do we position ourselves as Cosatu, as South Africa in relation to the BRICS, considering that our economy is the smallest in the BRICS, or whether the expectation from the BRIC countries is that we are going to be the supply of raw materials. But we're asking, comrade, in the report as how we should take the posture of BRICS and its development in particular, of China in particular in Africa. And we have seen some reaction by many other countries to the Chinan development. We look to the development in Africa, and our starting point, comrade, in the report, we raise 4 issues. That we are looking for an Africa that is free of poverty, free of hunger, unemployment, underdevelopment, inequality, and diseases. Recognizing the contribution of the international solidarity movement worldwide, but in particular of the working class in the defeat of the apartheid and the role that Africa as a continent has played. And therefore, we must pay special attention to the painful, terrifying conditions on our own continent, Africa. But we must reject the notion that goes around in terms of Africa that says nothing can be done by Africa. It will never develop. I think when the Minister of Development talk about the development in Africa in general and the contribution that South Africa has on Africa, we may find comfort in terms of what needs to be done in Africa. We must reject the notion that the plight of Africa is a given. We must reject the notion that Africa will always be like this, that it will never develop. Of course, there are many, many challenges, but they need to be addressed. And Cosatu has a contribution to make in the development and the strengthening of the labor movement in Africa. Then the report moves, comrade, from globally to Africa and come back at home. And using the 2015 plan, it talks about the alliance, and it raised some few issues around the NTR, the key economic advances, the industrialization, the infrastructural development, and the opposition parties' tendencies to attack Cosatu. And we have to find the reason why all these opposition parties, one of their target is Cosatu, from the National Party to Inkatha, to the DA, to the UDM. Those comrades in the mine will remember Mouthpiece and the 5 Madodas, the COPE and the EFF. It may be the role and the importance that Cosatu or trade unions can play. Then the report, comrades, goes to the transformation of the judiciary. There's a long section that talks about the transformation of judiciary, and that will need to engage in that report and be able to respond. It touches the violence in the public services, comrades. We have seen in the past few years the attack on nurses by members of the community. We saw it in Bara, we saw it in Alexandra, when the relatives of the patients visit their patients or their relatives in hospital and find them sleeping on the floor, find them on unwashed linen, find them hungry, not have received medication. They turn their anger to the nurses on issues that is beyond their control. We've seen the attacks on teachers, comrades. We read the stories of parents attacking the teachers when their children are not doing well. Umntwana uyafunda uyafeyila, abazali bashaya utishela. There's a long section, comrades, on the killing of police. The numbers in the report are horrifying, comrades. We understand the frustration that Pope go through when the president talk about the young people joining the force. It's a frustration because the response from our government is not enough. The response from the community is not enough. Initially, when we raised this issue in the CC, there was a lot of attack as to why we're only talking about the killing of police when people are dying every day. We explained, Comrade Tuguti, the attack on the police starts with the police, but the actual target is the ordinary people. When there are no longer police to protect the community, the criminals are going to go for the vulnerables, the unarmed, the women and the children. So it's our responsibility, comrade, to protect the police so that the police can protect us. In other countries, comrade, when you attack the police, you attack the state. And if we don't understand that, comrade, and if our government and our movement does not understand that the attack on police is the attack on the state, comrade, it's going to be very, very difficult. When there was a fight in the area here around Davidton, when the people were fighting and killing another for the remnants of the diamonds, of the gold, there was a policeman who was interviewed, who was reporting back and says, we can hear the guns But we are not going to go there. And it must be terrifying, comrades, because next time when the criminals come to your house and you phone the police station, they are not going to come. They are going to ask you how many people are there. And normally when we are attacked, comrades, we run under the bed with our cell phone and hoping the police are going to come. But police are not going to come, comrade, unless we are able to protect them. So this is a challenge, comrade, that we must debate in this Congress. On the 2015 plan, comrade, we do the assessment and we make some observation that on the swelling of ranks, comrade, this is one issue that the Federation has done very well. The person who is the governor of Reserve Bank comes from from Cosatu. The SG of the ANC comes from Cosatu. The deputy president of the country comes from Cosatu. The many premiers are coming from Cosatu. The many ministers are coming from Cosatu. The speakers of the legislatures, the majority of them are coming from Cosatu, and many, many more. The question we must ask, comrades, when we debate is that we have swelled the ranks. But what is the yardsticks of measuring our influence in that swelling of the ranks? So that we can be able to talk about the qualitative contribution that Cosatu has made in the swelling of the ranks. But also need, comrades, to have some discussions around our political definition of a trade unionist. When the party deploys their leaders to government, they still call them back to account in terms of the structures in which they are coming from. But for us, as soon as you leave Cosatu, we cut the relationship and we said, these are the former trade unionists and we have no relations with them. I think we need to debate and find how to use the comrades who have cut the political feed in the Federation. We must debate, comrade, in terms of the fact that when we go to the Alliance Summit, most of our arguments are taken on board. When we go to debate the manifesto, many of our issues are taken on board. But when it comes to implementation, I think that's where our gripe, comrades, lies, and we need to debate in terms of how we turn our good talks into actions. We're invited in summit, we're invited in Lekgotlas, we're invited almost every place where power lies, and we make our contribution. But the implementation is the issue that has just escaped us. On the 2015 plan and the party, comrade, I think we need to agree as a federation that almost all the resolution in the 2015 plan about the SACP, we have not managed to implement them, comrade. And we need to ask why. Socialist Commission, the Red October, the functionality of the Chrysan Institute, and the young workers, and swelling the ranks of the party. We need to do an introspection in our debate and be able to engage. We have not managed, comrades, to do what we committed to do on the student movement. The COSAS, and SASCO. We need to do the assessment on the political program. The assessment of the general election is in the report. The new opposition party, including the United Front, will need to engage on these issues. The corruption that everybody talks about is our issue, comrade. We must be able to debate the the corruption in our movement, the corruption in the society, the corruption that might be found in unions. We can't avoid this matter, comrade. We must engage with it head on. We need to discuss the social movements, that the many of them whom have been forming alliances in the past are now in the opposition of Cosatu. We need to revisit our strategy and be able to engage. We have to debate and discuss what is our posture to the 2016 local government election. In this discussion report, comrades, there are a number of recommendations in the document that I'm not going to talk to, but I'm going to highlight them in terms of pages. Page 54, page 65, they are all in a different colors, comrade. It says these are the recommendations. We must engage on those recommendations. At the same time, we must debate them and debate them together with the resolutions that we have submitted. Comrade Deputy President, I think we should stop here in terms of the report, because the report has been with yourself for a very, very long time. We want you to engage, want the union to debate those recommendations so that we can be able to move forward. I thank you very much. Amandla.
Thank you very much, Nopala. Comrades, that is the summary of the political report. I see the boards. Can I also, I noted UNUM, but can you also outline the process moving forward? You would know that the nominations for the position of the DGS was open until 10 o'clock. We would not want to take discussions on the report now, but rather call the IEC to give us the report on that position, and then take an address from Sanco, followed by an address by the SACP, and after the party's address, we will then come back to the political discussions and affiliate resolution. That's what we are proposing on moving forward, comrades. Can I hear NUM?
Thank you, Deputy President. What we wanted to propose, you covered it a little bit on your latter statement, that the political report, when we are starting to discuss it, we discuss it simultaneously with the draft resolutions, especially on political report. But the second aspect we wanted to raise as NUM, when we adjourned yesterday, there was an order made by the chairperson of the day that SACP must withdraw their statement on referring to the conference or to the delegates as a voting cause. So as NUM, we believe that that order still stands, and the comrade must withdraw that statement because we believe that it is a disrespect to the Congress or to the delegates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, NUM. Can I hear Nihau?
Thank you, President. We want to second NUM on the proposal of discussing the political report together with the draft resolutions of the political sections. And indeed, Comrade President, we're going to say that it will be out of order for the Congress to allow itself to be addressed by SACP when they did not observe the ruling of the chairperson and have not respected the Congress when the Congress made a grievance about them being called cows. So we think that if anybody cannot respect a national Congress, we think the Federation will never be respected anywhere else by that person. So as Nihao, we will refuse to be addressed by SACP until they withdraw that statement, Comrade President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Comrades, before I note there's a board right at the end, can I, for progress of Congress today, request SACP to humbly withdraw that statement? Humbly withdrawing that statement so that we can progress. No bala.
Comrade President, we humbly withdraw, but we also
Iman comrade, the General Secretary of SACP is on the podium.
we also appeal for consistency. When others call people in the Congress idols and pop stars, it's not an issue.
Thank you, SACP. It is noted. Comrades, can we be reminded of Congress rules? Can we be reminded of Congress rules? They are in your book 1. If you seem to be forgetting before you take a podium, remind yourself by refreshing on the Congress rules so that we have less of orders that are raised on how we conduct ourselves when we are interacting on these issues. I saw that board. I'm not sure whether it is still Limusa. Limusa, then Fau. Can I hear you, comrades?
Thanks, President. Limusa would want to second, for progress' sake, the proposal that has been put forward that we take IEC and take the speakers and come back to the discussion with regards to the political report. Thank you.
Thank you, Limusa. Fau.
No, thank you, Comrade President. We believe that it will be inconsistent for the table to simply note the concern that was raised by SACP. We think we should go to an extent of asking the respectable Democratic Teachers Union to withdraw.
Thank you, Fau. Comrades, lower the board. Satau, I've noted you. Because we want unity in the Federation and we want consistency. Hi, man, my comrade, I'm chairing. Can I be allowed? Comrades, FAU is requesting that SATU withdraws the pop stars remark. May we request SATU to humbly approach the mic and withdraw the pop star remark so that we can proceed with our Congress. Yimivuka ya izolo maqabane, we are on day 2. Can we address them and put them aside and proceed with Congress today? May I request SATU?
Thank you, President. As the South African Democratic Teachers Union, we must first make one particular clarity. That when we spoke here, there was no particular individual or grouping that was referred to as pop stars. However, what we said, is that in our understanding, President.
Satu, can we hold? Comrades, you must not howl. I'm chairing. Trust me, I'm in control. Satu, can I request you to hold the explanation? Hold the explanation, Satu, and humbly withdraw the popstar remark. Today, we will, I'm chairing. Can I humbly request you to do that?
No, it's fine, President. We're a union that wants to see progress and unity in this federation, so we withdraw.
Thank you very much, Satu. Thank you very much. Comrades, can we proceed? I am told the IEC is not ready. Are they? Oh, President, do you want to come and address?
Thank you very much, Comrade President. Just to say that there is a request that, and it's a request from the unions here, we delay a little bit on that process and allow you to proceed with the next item. We come back as soon as we get an indication of readiness from that side. Thank you very much.
Comrades, at this stage, may I call upon Sanco General Secretary to come and address the Congress. Can we have a revolutionary song to welcome Sanco to come and address the Congress, Comrades Kumbuzo Mbanza. Standing on Mama Kabane Sexen.
Mandla ikhosati yasetshenziswa ala ikhosati yasetshenziswa la ayithengwa ngemali ayithengwa ngethenda ikhosati yasetshenziswa halali ikhosati yasetshenziswa awungeke uyithenge ngemali awungeke uyithenge ngethenda Mandla Deputy President, who is also the chair of this session, we want to greet the Congress Cosatu and bring revolutionary greetings from the Executive Committee of Sanco, and also forward an apology on behalf of our president, who really wanted to be part of this, but because of his parliamentary duties, he couldn't make it. We want to greet the leadership of Cosatu, led by our president, uSidumo Dlamini Sibalikhulu, the entire leadership of Cosatu, nama affiliates and delegates of Cosatu. We also want to greet the African National Congress leaders present here. I assume that this time they are led by Treasurer General, Comrade William Keys, the Kabazel. He's all of a brother lead. But I think in terms of protocol now is Comrade TG. The leadership, the SACP, led by Second Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Soli. Oh, Mpephetha ngizange ngikubone. Siyabonga Mpephetha, siyaxolisa. And the leadership of Sanco, led by my good self. And all the delegates, the guests that are present with us, and all protocol observed. Before President, I read my prepared speech, I want to do some few observations. Firstly, we want to thank Sanco the wise words that we have heard yesterday from the two presidents of our alliance. First, from the Comrade Stumo of Cosatu, and also President Jacob Zuma, who's the African National Congress and State President. I think, comrades, those wise words that we heard yesterday, we must just go and implement them as they are. Begumkhabulo loya. And it's khablile, comrades, because it's important that as leaders and members of this wonderful alliance, siyawubamba umkhabulo and isiqhubeke now, because kunje embuthweni wethu, because comrades awasawuhloniphi and they don't respect umkhabulo. I also want President to support what was said by Cosatu President yesterday on the sections. I think we must underline the sections of media who are busy peddling lies in our movement. I know today they are talking and they will then send messages and say, Cosatu has done this and that. And they will talk about the alliance and reconfigure it and reconstruct it and say the tripartite alliance met. I want to talk about that unapologetically. I have not heard the president of Cosatu yesterday talking about the tripartite alliance. Said the alliance. The alliance, which is ANC, SACP, Cosatu, and Sanco. The president of the ANC has not said that. But when it goes out to the media, newspapers and TVs, they will say the tripartite gathered in Midrand, which is lies. And we cannot allow those lies to continue. And I want to support the president of Cosatu by saying that he was talking about the book that was written and say, don't buy it and don't read it, Google it. I want to say, don't buy those newspapers who are spreading lies and peddling lies about our goodness. Google them. Google them. Don't watch those channels of TV who are spreading lies. Maybe you can Google them as well. I don't know how much channel are Google. But for any YouTube, don't watch them, isolate them. I just wanted to raise those few comments, Chair. I will start my speech, Chairperson, with a quote. This is the quote from the wise comrades and great thinkers of that time. Open quote. The problem of cadres is posed under the premise that the line has been worked out. That is why a wise political line is the precondition for the existence of good cadres. It's quite impossible to have good cadres if the line is wrong. Of course, a wise line alone cannot exclude the possibility of wrongdoing and degradation on the part of the cadres, because whether a cadre acts rightly or wrong, is good or bad, depends on many other factors than the line, including his personal attributes. However, a correct line is the basic condition in bringing the revolutionary task to success. And as such, it produces one batch after another of good cadres and keeps to a minimum the possibility of cadres committing errors in political orientation. To be sure, in a revolutionary movement, it is hardly possible to prevent a few bad, opportunist elements from infiltrating into the revolutionary ranks. However, if we have a strong mass movement arising from and developing a correct line, and if the majority of our cadres stand firmly on this correct line, noxious or harmful tendencies not only have little chance of swaying our cadres, but are also very likely themselves to be swept aside. But the picture will be quite different if errors are committed in a political line. A wrong line will take the cadres away from the correct direction and throw confusion into their ranks and push numbers of them into wrongdoing. Of course, in such situations, there are always those who are alert enough to tell right from wrong and are able to defend the truth. To bring the movement back on the right path, the revolution must pay what is sometimes a very high price, including in terms of cadres, the most valuable asset of the revolution. These comrades are an extract from the great thinkers Led One and Hanoi in their articles that they've written during that time. 30 years ago in Durban, progressive workers from all sectors of the economy met to inaugurate what was to be the biggest trade union federation in South Africa to date. In that conference, a line was clearly articulated for all delegates and the world to know that Cosatu would adhere to the principles of one union, one industry, one country, one federation. An injury to one is an injury to all. The Freedom Charter is the blueprint of the working people. International solidarity, linking workers' struggles with broad societal and community struggles for the liberation of South Africa and beyond. In the last 3 decades, Cosatu has lived up to this line, though remain some challenges, but were resolvable. We have witnessed Cosatu growing to over 1.5, and yesterday we heard that they are now plus minus 1.9 members to date. We have witnessed Cosatu impacting on economic policies of our democratic government, in particular the labor relations component of such policies. We have witnessed workers securing the right to strike as a result of the efforts of Cosatu. We have witnessed the establishment of bargaining forums across several industries, with Cosatu affiliates taking a lead in these forums. We have witnessed the LRA becoming friendlier to the working people of this country. We have witnessed Cosatu leaders being deployed to take leadership positions in all spheres of government due to their experience and expertise acquired through their involvement in the struggle for liberation of this country and in the struggle for bettering the lives of workers. For all the achievements in the labor relations arena, we want as Sanco to bow our heads to the cadres of Cosatu for their tireless struggles for the benefit of the working people. We salute your leadership. Squabeleni. There is nothing wrong with Ikwabele when you are doing very well. Squabeleni. We are convinced that there is still more work to be done to achieve the line articulated by the delegates in the inaugural conference of Cosatu 30 years ago. According to the Minister of Labour, Comrade Mildred Oliphant, who is present with us today, greetings, Senior Shop Steward. On the occasion of the NUM Congress earlier this year, I quote her, open quote, "Union density in the recent years has declined from 36% in 1997 to about 24% in 2013. This means some 76% of workers are unorganized. The emergence of many new rival unions, which are often set up by union officials who once were leaders of the same union they seek to destabilize. What does this imply? It implies that our unions are focused on the remaining 24% of the workforce and leave the majority of the workers outside the bargaining processes. We are confident as Sanco that Cosatu leadership have the capacity and commitment to turn this situation around by ensuring that union and membership density is increased to over 70% in the next decade of its existence. We do have belief in that, comrades. The line of one federation, one country is being undermined by the fact that at the end of 2014, there were approximately 20 labor federations and 179 trade unions registered in this country as the statistics provided by the Department of Labor. The statistics further postulate that about 18% of the workers are covered in collective bargaining of one kind or the other. This means that only 2.7 workers out of 15.1 million workers at the end of 2014 benefit from the collective bargaining to this extent. An average of 4% million of these were dependent on the ministerial determinations as they had no trade unions to represent them. The sum total of this is that at least 12 million workers are either not organized or their unions are too weak to collectively bargain for them. This, in our view as Sanco, is a poser and an opportunity for Cosatu to grow beyond its current members. For this to be realized, the line articulated by the founding conference should be a frame of reference moving forward. South African National Civic organization Sanco congratulates the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu, ahead of the celebration of its 30th anniversary milestone for continuous and reliable defense of workers' interests. We are convinced that the milestone will spur the Federation and its affiliates to reclaim the unity, principles of democratic centralism, majority decision, workers' control, and organizational discipline that sustained it under the harsh and repressive apartheid regime. We have no doubt that the great strides and gains that the giant worker federation has made on behalf of millions since it was established on the 1st of December 1985 signify its importance in overcoming the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. It is in the interest of every worker and the unemployed in our communities for Cosatu to rise above the turbulent challenges of personality cults, factionalism, patronage, and careerism, which are threatening the unity of our revolutionary alliance and mass democratic movement. We are convinced that the leadership of Cosatu is still driven by one desire, the desire to unite all workers in our country and to defend their interests. As we celebrate with all workers, we wish to reiterate our commitment to implementation of joint programs linking workers and community struggles, as we used to do in the 1970s and in the 80s, and calls upon workers to lead in the building or formation of street committees, village committees, and other mass-based program of action. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, we cannot but recognize the role played by Cosatu and its cadres in ensuring that the clauses encapsulated in the Freedom Charter are realized in all policy formulations and strategic postulations of our government. The more radical second phase of our democratic revolution and implementation of the National Development Plan require the partnership of a stronger and united federation with a mass progressive civil society led by Sanco. That we need to accelerate service delivery in our communities and deepen transformation across all sectors to eradicate poverty, unemployment, and inequality. These are the conditions precedent for achieving the objectives of the Freedom Charter and achieving a national democratic society. In conclusion, Chairperson, every worker is a community member, and our struggles for bettering the lives of our people are therefore intertwined. Sanco and Cosatu have no choice but to form a strong, progressive civil society as a precondition for a total transformation of society and the ushering in of a national democratic society in our lifetime. Amandla! Amandla! Qina msebenzi qina! Qina msebenzi qina! Qina msebenzi qina! Amandla!
Thank you very much, Nobala Wabahlali. Comrades, we are now moving with our program. We will call upon the South African Communist Party General Secretary, Comrade Blade Nzimande, to come and address our Congress. Asifumani gwitsho maqabane. Cosatu is 30 years this year. We must celebrate that milestone. So, sicela ingoma, my comrade. Okay, sorry, comrades. Bopa. Sorry, leadership. I am just being told now IEC is ready to give us the report on that position of the DGS. And thereafter, we take the General Secretary of the party, the IEC.
Good morning, delegates. You recall that the nominations process opened until 10 a.m. this morning. This is for the Deputy GS position. The nomination is now closed and the status quo remains. The Deputy General Secretary position will thus be contested between Soli Petu and Paka Oscar. That election will need to take place tomorrow. We will set up a voting station in Hall 2, I presume. But specific details will be provided. But please just note then that voting will take place tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, comrades. That's the report from the IEC. Hoping that the report is clear, that the elections will resume tomorrow. During progress of today, I think we will be able to communicate at what time will it start and how we are going to process when the voting, which one goes first. As we proceed with today's proceedings, we will continuously notify Congress on how we shall take that path of voting. Can I then request Congress, Nihau, to sing, lead us with a song to welcome the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, the only vanguard party of the working class in South Africa. Nihau.
Amandla. Viva Cosatu, viva. Qina Cosatu, qina. Viva the African National Congress, viva. Viva the South African Communist Party, viva.
Viva Sanco, viva! Phansi ngama-labor brokers, phansi! Phansi nge-capitalism, phansi! Forward to socialism, forward! Forward to the unity of Cosatu, forward! Amandla! Comrade President, Comrade Ustumo, Dlamini, the Acting General Secretary, Comrade Beginjalinjal, and all the other office bearers of the Federation, the National Treasurer or the Treasurer General of the ANC, Comrade Uzweli Mkhize, and the ANC delegation present here, Comrade Solima Paela, the Second Deputy General Secretary of the SACP, and the SACP delegation, Nobhala we Sanco, ne delegation ye Sanco ekhona la, leadership and delegates from the various affiliates of Cosatu, as well as our international guests, comrade delegates, good morning. This morning I bring fraternal and revolutionary greetings from the membership and leadership of the South African Communist Party, which now stands at just under 240,000. To this important congress of our ally, Cosatu. In the middle of the year, and immediately after the Special National Congress of the SACP, the Alliance came out of a very useful summit. And also, you are holding this Congress, comrades, at a time when the Federation has been facing some very serious challenges, perhaps more serious than at any other stage of its existence. At your 11th Congress, our message as the SACP was that it is important for the working class to take responsibility for the national democratic revolution. Indeed, that was at the time of the offensive against the NUM, an offensive that we correctly insisted at that time that is not just directed at the NUM, in the end it's directed at Cosatu itself and our movement as a whole. Little did we know, though we suspected, that this offensive will also be directed against the South African Communist Party. And it's being led by class forces who think that they are strong enough to try and dislodge the left. Now, let's remind ourselves what we said at the conclusion of the Alliance Summit, because this is very important in terms of dealing with what we need to be dealing with at this Congress. The Alliance Summit said, amongst other things in its declaration, and I want to quote it, discussions in the summit focused considerably on a range of internal weaknesses, difficulties, and challenges found across all our formations. These include a growing social distance between leadership and our mass constituency, including a disconnect between the focus of branch activities and the social and economic realities of communities, including crass displays of wealth and arrogance. The declaration continued to say these problems reinforce and are connected to the deliberate manipulation and subversion of internal democratic processes through the manipulation of membership, through gatekeeping and the use of money to advance individual ambitions and factions based on patronage and nepotism. This behavior is also the entry point for corporate capture and private business interests outside of our formations to undermine organizational processes. Then the summit further resolved that these deviations must be dealt with firmly and without fear or favor. Those guilty of funding factions and those guilty of accepting money for these purposes must be exposed, unquote. This is a very important message coming out of the summit, looking at threats to our own organizations, all of them. Perhaps the problem of circulation of money in our conferences and the dangers of corporate capture reflect a deeper problem, an intensification of class struggles in society, parts of which aim to replace our alliance. We want to argue as the SACP that part of the struggle is trying to do the following. Our alliance, as the President said yesterday so eloquently, is principally based on the working class as its anchor. But there is now a new attempt to replace this alliance with a new alliance between sections of our own and the capitalist class, where the capitalist class will be the new anchor of that alliance, replacing this one of ours. For instance, we must be honest here, comrades, amongst ourselves, about all ourselves. We get worried when some of our own comrades begin to say the SACP and Cosatu no longer add any value to our alliance. Now, in other words, this is beginning to say, some amongst ourselves are saying the working class is no longer of any value during this period of our revolution. And we want to say, comrades, as the SACP, the kinds of challenges we are facing as South Africa requires maximum unity of the alliance. We are not going to resolve those by going our different ways. Those who think so, that the SACP can go on its own, or the ANC can go on its own, they are hugely mistaken. In fact, that may be part of the agenda to try and derail the National Democratic Revolution. Can't have such high levels of unemployment and divide the alliance, for example. Now, we wish that we take the words of the President very seriously, that he said yesterday. Now, comrades, let's also not make a mistake. The problem and threat of corporate capture does not only face the ANC or those in government. It faces all of us, not least the trade union movement. Because you are seated here, comrades, representing millions of workers as the spear, as it has been said, But to business people, you are a good business proposition because you have millions of debit orders and stop orders for funeral policies, for insurance policies, and all other types of financial products. Those who want to be rich, you preside over billions of rands of your pension funds. They want those pension funds, and they are targeting Cosatu as a federation so that they are able to get those monies. That usually also is the foundation of what we have called business unionism. Now, Communist Party is not immune either. By the way, we hope that Comrade President and Comrade Delegates, you will discuss this matter at this Congress. The threat of money to the existence and the unity of our organizations. Now, we are asking some of these searching questions as the Communist Party because it is absolutely essential to always contextualize our struggles against the background of what the Communist Manifesto says, that the history of all hitherto existing society is a history of class struggle. There is a matter I'll come back to, because 21 years into our democracy, there is some serious reflection that we will need to make about ourselves, our country, where we are. Also by studying experiences in other countries that traversed a similar path as we are seeking or as we have been traveling. But let me first start by contextualizing further some of these challenges I'm outlining. Since the decisive advance that we all welcomed way back in 2007 in the Polokwane Conference of the ANC, part of the resolutions and the goals of that conference have in fact been frustrated by the fact that by the time the leadership that was elected in Polokwane took the reins of government, we were already 1 year into a global capitalist crisis. And it has not left us. The fourth administration and this fifth administration has been living under this cloud of a capitalist crisis, which we are told now there is even a possibility of a further global recession that may have enormous impact on our country. Our document of the SACP, titled Going to the Root, which we would urge President that Cosatu engages with that document, explains these economic challenges, amongst other things, quite comprehensively. What we are arguing in that document is that if we are going to change the economic direction of our country and drive what the ANC correctly calls a second, more radical phase of our transition, we need to partly liberate ourselves from the imperialist economic centers so that we can pursue an economic path that allows us to exercise some sovereignty as a country. What are the key economic propositions that that SACP document is making? Not on its own, of course. Even in the alliance, some of these things we have agreed upon. For instance, that document calls for the cancellation of neo-colonial bilateral agreements, for instance, with the EU and other countries. We are also calling for local beneficiation. We are all agreed on that as the alliance. We also want to leverage state procurement to ensure greater localization as part of broader state-led industrial policy action plans. Infrastructure development that begins to partially delink our productive economy from a neo-colonial pit-to-port pattern. Our economy is still largely mining, taking minerals from the pit to the nearest port and exporting to other parts of the world, often coming back as beneficiated products that we no longer even realize that the origins of those products was the platinum or the gold or the diamond that we have actually dug in our own country. We have also called for the active use of trade and tariff measures to ensure greater protection of local jobs and productive activity, and a shift away from a shareholder-based black economic empowerment. That is very crucial, comrades. Our model of black economic empowerment has been largely based on shareholding, not enough on the production of skills. You find many shareholders in big companies, but they don't understand anything about the processes, even of in the companies in which they own. In other words, the question of skilling the working class and skilling our nation is fundamental in the kind of economic trajectory that we are calling for. Using anti-competition legislation and agencies to weaken the collusive behavior of transnational monopoly capital, as well as addressing a range of financial sector challenges, including tax-based erosion, transfer pricing, illegal capital flight, and implementing asset legislation on local and multinational capital. For example, we are currently faced with the challenge of funding and financing higher education. The financial sector is sitting on top of trillions of rands in this country. Under apartheid, the banks and the insurance companies were required to invest a percentage of their profits into particular areas. Why are we not campaigning together as an alliance to say some of those monies, for instance, must be invested to support higher education for poor and working class students? As a very concrete campaign that we must take. By the way, one of the things, President and delegates, we hope will come out here, we want out of here a militant campaigning Cosatu that is not an extension of government or the ANC or the SACP. That must be part of driving this second, more radical phase of our transition in order to, amongst other things, realize these goals that we have outlined. Now, there are some significant developments, of course, that are taking place globally, which I wouldn't have time to actually deal with all of them. Comrade Begi outlined, we are very pleased in the political report, some of the areas that needs to be dealt with. All maybe that we need to really welcome is the beginnings of the normalization of relations between Cuba and the United States of America. That is our victory, comrades, and the victory of the Cuban people. But it's not enough. We are calling upon the United States to lift the economic embargo against the Cuban people. Now, Here is a matter that I want to touch upon, Comrade President, that I mentioned earlier. 21 years into our democracy, we must reflect on experiences, our own experience, but also from other countries. What has happened to liberation movements or former liberation movements once they ascend into power, including in instances where those liberation movements have been in alliance with the trade union movement and communists. I think it is important that we reopen this debate, because even through political education and reflect on this, because if we don't do that, we are running the risk of repeating these mistakes without being aware of what has happened in other countries. It's very crucial that we reopen this debate. Very, very crucial. For instance, there is something we've referred to as sins of incumbency. That when you have been occupying a particular position for a long time, you tend to relax. Either as an ANC government, 21 years into power, we start developing some complacency. But it's not only the ANC. Most of the Cosatu unions here, you are a huge majority in the sectors in which you are organizing. So there is a danger of SATU beginning to be complacent as the major teachers' trade union on how in the sectors in which it is organizing, or SACP in the sectors in which it is organizing, because we are big, we are the majority, or SASCO, because it's been a dominant student organization. We do need, comrades, to fight and watch this complacency. Many other movements got defeated precisely because of that. We must be vigilant at all times. But let's look at what has happened to some former liberation movements, the problems that they have come across. I just want to mention 5, very briefly. Firstly, in a number of instances where even liberation movements were defeated after having ascended to power, usually it's the failure to transform the state. That the new part of the liberation movement, when it ascends to the state, all what it does is just grab the same colonial levers of state and seek to use them to try and change society, and it often doesn't work unless you transform the state quite thoroughly. The second challenge is the failure to address the national question. The failure to unite and build a new nation. In other countries, you start seeing the liberation movement deteriorating into tribal politics and no longer united as it was in the struggle against colonialism. We must also not be complacent on this front, comrades. In fact, one of the biggest achievements of the African National Congress was to unite the African people. And you can never build a single South African nation unless the foundation is a united African people in this country. That's your core that will actually unite us, and we must not make a mistake of abandoning this question. The third failure, usually, and which is very serious, is the failure to transform the colonial and imperialist-based domestic economy and simply continue along the lines of a colonial economy. It's very important, comrades, that we reflect on these experiences. In fact, the SACP is committing to actually circulating documents for debate and discussion. What should we be learning? The other failure where there's been is that when the liberation movement ascends into power, in many instances it has betrayed the motive forces of the national liberation struggle, especially the working class. And in some instances even begin to turn against the working class. A new bourgeoisie emerges, but a highly deformed bourgeoisie, engenamali, dependent from imperial capital, and becomes what is normally called a parasitic bourgeoisie. Now, we must watch against this. But it's not only liberation movements that sometimes default like this. Trade unions themselves are not innocent sometimes. Look at Zambia. Uchiluba used his Zambian trade union movement to oust Kenneth Kaunda, but he pursued some of the worst neoliberal policies, and in the end, he turned against the trade union movement itself. And the Zambian trade union movement has never recovered from that, even today. That is why, Cosatu, you must always be vigilant that you do not have forces who pretend that they love the trade union movement so much, when in fact they want to sell it to the next highest imperialist bidder. That's why we are so excited as a Communist Party namhlanje to see you like this, getting together, rising, and becoming the federation that we have come to know. Now, my communist was nathi. Yeah, the Indian Communist Party has split in the early 1960s on the question of how was it going to continue relating to the Congress movement. They were allies. And in some instances, communist parties become too much inward-looking and doesn't know how to relate to the rest of the working class. All these issues, comrades, we are pleading as the party, not as an academic exercise. Let's reflect on these lessons as part of studying our own history, by the way, because we must also learn from our own history. Now, Comrade President, the last set of issues I would like to raise is our relationship between SACP and Cosatu, the socialist axis of the alliance. As I have said, comrades, we are very pleased that Cosatu is getting out of the serious challenges it has been facing. And we would like to use this opportunity to salute you as you approach your 30th anniversary next month. Driving a second, more radical phase of our transition requires a strong working class, including, we've decided, by the way, a strong and larger but quality SACP. You know, kukhona inganekwane ezike zixoxela emini ngesizulu kuthiwa uma uxoxa inganekwane emini uyomela impondo. Inso kuthiwa iSACP is a party of theory and political education. That's all we should be. We don't know where they take this from. Since 1921, we were born into struggle and activism as South African communists. We built the trade union movement in this country. No political party has a history like ours in terms of building a trade union movement. We built the ICU in the 1920s. The ICU made a mistake, decided the leadership Yakonu Kadali to collude with white liberals and expel the communists, and it collapsed. Because often when you expel communists, you are inviting trouble, or when you try to do that. You collapse the ICU. We're a permanent feature of the revolution in this country. We're not here temporarily. In the 1930s, the 1940s, we built cooperatives, continued to build the trade union movement, and J.P. Marx, the chair of the SACP, led that heroic 1946 mine workers' strike. When the ANC and the Congress Alliance in the 1950s launched the Defiance Campaign, we were underground because the apartheid regime had banned us in 1950, but communists were there. When the armed struggle was launched, communists were there, who have never only been a party of theory or just sitting in classes for political education. We have always been a party of both theory and practice. That's what we have been. So as the SACP, also there is this other myth that we must always continue being a tiny, tiny, tiny party. Where is that coming from? Communist Party of China has got 80 million members. And it's still a quality party. Why should we continue being small and tiny? And we want to grow, Comrade President, but we've decided we are going to grow smarter by recruiting from amongst yourselves, organized workers. I'm a shop stewards. We want them in here in the South African Communist Party. And organized workers. We can't emphasize, this is your political party, comrades. Unless you build it, unless you yourself actually build this party. Now, together with Cosatu, our relationship can't just be relationships based in the boardroom. We must have fighting campaigns together. Now, ours is a struggle for socialism, comrades. And no one will give us a socialism other than ourselves. Nobody else will give that to the working class unless it's driven by the working class itself. Between now and our 14th Congress as the SACP, as I have said, we want to build an even larger party. And an even bigger Cosatu must be built. Now, we must wage also a relentless struggle against factionalism in all our formations and organizations. This thing, comrades who are so preoccupied already now, 2017, with what will happen in the African National Congress, that's dangerous and irresponsible. We are happy the ANC MGC has said this matter is closed. We have local government elections next year. It's a huge challenge that we are facing. Why are we focusing starting to divide ourselves, starting to create a situation not very dissimilar to the situation we went through in the run-up to Polokwane? That is wrong. Now, we want to urge Cosatu once more to join us in the financial sector campaign that we are revitalizing, Comrade President. What are we wanting with this financial sector campaign? We want to change the architecture of the financial sector in this country. We want more money, as we have said, to be redirected away from consumption into productive sectors of the economy. We are pushing for an end to private monopoly domination of the banking sector. There is no country like us in the world, small and developing, but with 4 oligopolistic banks, not just monopolistic, oligopolistic banks. They do not care about your SMEs, about your cooperatives, and many other activities that you should be supporting. In fact, we want to call on Cosatu and its affiliates. Amanye ama-affiliates eCosatu now ushintshe ngani zakwethu. Isenti nalo. You do have some money. Ake ni redirect enyali imali yokwakha ama-workers cooperative banks. And we can never have, we have the legislation, we want it through this campaign, but we are not getting these workers' cooperative banks, which can make a big difference. Also, we are saying, let's implement a resolution of giving proper license to the Post Bank as a state bank that will operate along developmental lines. Also, comrades, the party has been campaigning against evictions. So many workers are being evicted from their houses, it's not a joke. In fact, the problem has become so serious that it's reaching the same levels as the Group Areas Act evictions. There is corruption between some offices of magistrates and bank officials. Your house gets repossessed. We are owing 350,000 rands. It gets auctioned for 150 rand. You can see there is manipulation somewhere, and we are still left with debt, but it goes away and be sold, and some people are benefiting from that. We are saying you must join us to fight these housing evictions. The last but one issue, comrades, is around the recent student mobilization. The SACP says from its central committee last weekend, it saluted the widespread radical mobilization of students over the past several weeks and associated itself with the demand to advance towards free access to higher education for the working class and the poor, and that no qualifying students should be excluded from post-school education and training on financial grounds. This is the SACP speaking now, not a department. In the course of student mobilization, many things have been exposed, including the untransformed nature of many of our institutions. And also these student struggles in many instances achieved display of non-racial unity and has added an important and fresh impetus to the long-standing struggle of the SACP and Cosatu against outsourcing of campus workers. We wish to congratulate Nehau, by the way, on some of the victories notched in terms of insourcing. Now, in order to take this momentum forward, the SACP also is of the view that we must expose the small minority of anarchistic forces who are seeking to use the legitimate demands of students for entirely other agendas. Like the destruction that we are seeing is delegitimizing legitimate student struggles. We must condemn in the strongest possible terms the destruction of university property. That's counter-revolutionary. It does not take us anywhere, comrades. Now, what is the way forward? The ANC-led alliance, and particularly the PYA formations, working with Nehau and SATU, have a critical responsibility in this situation. We must speak with one voice, comrades. And we must listen patiently to the many issues confronting students. We must provide concrete leadership on the ground, boldly and confidently, campus by campus, addressing the specific issues in different localities. We must not provide leadership arrogantly or by proclamation, but on the basis of a common radical program for the transformation of the entire post-school education and training system. SACP has also decided that our financial sector campaign now is going to include a new demand, financing of higher education. It's going to be part of the SACP's campaign in the transformation of the financial sector. We are going to be fighting together with Cosatu against casualization, outsourcing, and labor brokers. But lastly, President, angizoyifunda kwakuyifunda le nto because it's in my head. We are being accused by some people that the SACP is dividing Cosatu. We want to reject this with the contempt it deserves. We can't be a communist party that has spent 94 years of its existence building the trade union movement and then come to divide Cosatu. The aim of those who are saying so is to drive a wedge between the Communist Party and organized workers in this country. We must not allow that, comrades. Lenin, by the way, warned that if you drive a wedge between the labor movement and the trade union movement, they travel separately, as it has happened in many countries. They are both, will both be walking very confidently into their own destruction. Both of them. Both the communist movement and the trade union movement. Also, we want to make the record clear here, comrades. There are some who are saying, yeah, the SACP is taking a side. The SACP is against the FAO, is against the SACAO. There is no such. How can it be like that? If FAO, a communist, and we want to say to FAO workers, the Communist Party, comrades, cares about you as well as SACAO, and we want to work with you just like we work with the rest of the affiliates of Cosatu. We are glad that despite the challenges, you are here at Kaya because your only home is Cosatu, no other place. And we welcome Comrade Bones. Nino Katish, don't make a mistake. Sizoza kunina ngenkansi Communist Party ukuthi asihlale phansi sixoxe so that we contribute to the unity of the federation. And we hope coming out of here, comrades, let's have less energy directed at ourselves internally. Save the energy to direct it at the bosses. That's where the battle is. The battle is not internal, the battle is out there. Internally, we must work to strengthen ourselves so that we are able to fight the battles that we have to fight. Nor are we against any worker or any worker formation. Lemusa, we love metal workers, both in Lemusa and those who are outside. We are not fighting against metal workers as the South African Communist Party, and we are quite principled about that. That is why we wish you a successful Congress, comrades. And we are looking forward to the outcomes of this Congress. Thank you very much.
Well, South African Communist Party General Secretary Blade and Nzimande, fiery as always, and with lots and lots of things to say. I'm so many of the things that he said there will get a lot of tongues wagging here at this 12th Congress of the Congress of South African Trade Unions. Well, that is where we are going to leave it for now. News is up next, but that's after this short ad break.
wethu webasebenzi ngoba kudala sisebenza